G'day and welcome back to my workbench. Now the Sunderland, well, it's standing up on its own legs, so to speak, at the moment. I have glued the wings and the tailplanes on, finally. Yes, they are. A little bit of putty there to go in, and Becca's given me some new putty up to try out, which is Aqueous Surfacer 500. I used the other Mr. Putty sort of surfacer, and it was lacquer based, I think, so I used to make my head spin. I have a lot of problems with that. This is water based. We'll give that a try. Doesn't need much putting, it's just a tiny bit in the joints. I mean, looks great from this distance, yeah. Now also, I've got all the blobby pilots and the gunners for the turrets. They have to be painted up, so there's a bit of painting to do. No, they're not bombs as such, they're actually depth charges, yeah. Actually, they drop these out and they go down the water and they look for submarines. Yes, they do. Now, the kit parts are just pretty basic, but there's a huge problem with them, and I'm going to show you how to fix that and make it a lot better, and it won't take long at all. It's an easy fix. My exhausts for the motors, yep, they've been primed for a while sitting there. I'm going to get out my dark copper. I've used this to great effect before when I did that seaplane. Yeah, that racing one, yeah. That was the best way to do the copper radiators, and I'm going to use that on here, but I'm going to weather it a little bit because with the white and the grey on this, you don't really want them to have bling bright copper exhaust, so they'll be toned down a bit to make them more palatable. So there's that in the painting and the doing, and the only assembling left to do, things to build, well, I've got to put the floats back on because I'd take them off when I fixed up that camo. The only assembling I've got left are the landing lights, and I've got a trick with those so we can actually create the light behind, because that's just the landing light cover. Behind that is actually, you know, a little lamp, right? So I've got a trick to do that. Now the props, yeah, there were 3 of them, but unfortunately you need 4. So here's the choice. I can cast, make a copy. That might work. It might look okay. I've got Aftermarket out of resin, and they're very nice actually. They're quite good, but they don't have the spinner. They just basically got the little, you know, the business here for attaching all the blades to. That's an option. And there's also a secret weapon in here, but I will talk about that later in the video. Let's get into it. Let's finish the Sunderland. Well, try and do as much as I can in the video. Okay, here we go. Roll the music. Now the propellers, Sunderland propeller. Well, the Airfix standard fare, look, they're not bad, and when you put them into the cowling, you know, they're quite good. They hide most of the pistons, and they're oversized. The spinner is way too big for all the photos I've seen, especially for the Sunderland 3, much too big, and the blades are actually too thin. So that's a problem. So what can you do? Well, you can go Aftermarket, and here we are. Here's the set here that I've already started working with. They're little resin ones, and they didn't cost me much. It was basically not even a shekel. That's only $5 US. So they're a bit of an option, but they are resin, and they're in lots of little pieces you've got to put together. But I must say, once you do them, they are quite nice. Now you can sort of see, and you can see a bit of your cowling inside there, see your motor, right? And they do look the part, but they are fragile. But they certainly have a lot of detail on them. There's no spinner on them. They just come with a little bit that sticks out, the little pushy bit, which is correct. That's all correct. I managed to find some maintenance photos with the Sunderland, and that is correct. That's how they should look. But most of the time, you want a little spinner on there. So, okay. So there's that option. Then there's another option that you could look at, okay? What do you think of that? Spinning props. And I've got the correct spinner on there. Right, so spinner is correct. And this piece, as you can see with it shining there in the light, it's a piece of acetate. And what he's done is, on that acetate, he has printed reflections. Now, I've got about 4 sheets of these. These weren't the best printed ones. And the idea was I was just basically testing everything out, seeing how it worked and how you actually install them. So I'll show you how to make this Aftermarket one if you want your props to sit sort of standard, still, if you like. And that's a good solution. But if you want it in flight and you actually want to make it look like it's really doing the thing, then you can't beat a spinning prop. This option, the aftermarket option. So let's get into this. Let's say there's quite a few bits. Well, it's not as bad as it sounds, really. You've got the hub is apart, okay? So that's apart. And then your blades each are apart. So there's 4 parts per prop sort of assembly. So that's not too bad. But the thought I had was, how am I going to get this thing not to all fall apart while I'm trying to glue bits to there, and and the blades have got to be at a certain pitch, and then they've all got to be 120 degrees apart, and it's just going to be a nightmare. How can I do that? Well, you make a jig, Harry. That's how you do it. So what I did was I made an equilateral triangle, okay? So that triangle is 120 degrees, 120 degrees, or the inside is 60, okay? And on my cutting board, I've actually got a marker that says 60 degrees, but any sort of set square that's 30, 60, 90 set square, it'll do it. Or you can simply just measure exactly a certain length and repeat it 3 times, and it'll make an equilateral triangle. Or you can put your prop down like that, right? One of these, and work out where the points are, and you could create a triangle from that. Whatever way you do it, end up with something that's going to be a template, so that way you can get your blades correct. Your next problem is they've got to have what's called pitch, okay? So if you have a look at the Airfix one, sure, the blades are all 120 degrees apart there, but if you have a look side on, the blades are like 45 degrees. See that? That's called a pitch. And that will vary. They change the pitch on what they need to do for accelerating and oomph and all the rest of it. Pitch is a whole science in itself, so I won't even try and explain that. But Airfix is sort of done at 45 degrees, so I sort of thought, okay, well, what could I do? And my first idea was I put down little blobs of blue tack, and then that propped up the side of the prop, pushed up the side of the prop, and therefore as it went in, it was tilted at 45 degrees. That worked really well. That was great. Glued it all together. That's fine. Let it set. Went to pull it off. The stickiness of the blue tack was far more adhesive than the tiny little join to the hub, and I broke each time. 3 times I tried it. So what I ended up doing was I made these little blocks on there which are chamfered to 45 degrees. You probably can't tell, but they actually have little chamfers on them. Right, so they're just parts of this stock styrene. And I had a guy actually in comments on my last video said, you shouldn't be wasting all your stock styrene on stuff like this. It's expensive. I use margarine tins. And that's a good idea if it's something thin. But for this, I need something sturdy. So I've got my 2mm stock. And I've quite a bit of it. I scored a whole lot from a guy at the club that didn't need it anymore. And he said, do you want this? He gave me like a whole ton of sheets. So anyhow, for me, not a problem. I built my own template. You can build it out of anything. You could build that out of wood, steel, carbon fibre, I don't know, dead cats, whatever you got lying around. Okay, so let me show you how I proceed to put this together. Now, I had a bit of trial and error with this, so this is the best method that I found. Now, cut the hub off and basically do a little pilot hole there in the end. Put a 1mm drill bit in. 1mm work for me, I'll explain why in a sec. I have a tube, and that tube will take a 1mm rod. So, my 1mm rod, shove hard in there. I didn't even have to glue it. Actually, that resin is sort of so clingy that it just clung on. And then I glue the tube to the rod. Now that tube is exactly the right width to fit inside the cowlings as per the Airfix size. Now, when that's set, you push in your little hub into my jig, and that's designed so that its friction fits in there and it's taped to the other end so I can get it perfectly perpendicular, because you don't want a wonky propeller. Now, I just cut these off here, and I did sand them and line them up off camera, but I thought that was boring to show you because sanding's really boring. Now, this looks easy, and it is fairly easy, but I've cut out all the ships and the, the ducks. Yeah. You just fiddle it a little bit, get them in place, and this is what I found. Don't glue anything at this stage, because if you do, you bump it and it all comes to slodge. Just get it set up on the jig. Now, I'm using white wood glue because I tried CA, but every time I did it with CA, if you bumped anything later on or when you pulled it off, the shearing of the pulling of blades meant that they just fell off. But when I did it with white wood glue, it has a bit of elasticity. So there you go. That's how I made those spinning props. This is the next method, using these acetate sheets where David's already printed out these spinning things from it. I don't know if you can buy this sort of stuff aftermarket, probably, but I mean, if you can print onto acetate yourself, all you've got to do is work out dimensions, and I think you can get hold of these files. I'll have to ask David, but it's a clever thing where you've got the illusion of a spinning prop. Now, first thing you're going to need is you're going to need to create the centre, of course. So what I've got here is I've got that same tube again, which is about it says 2.3. It's about 2.5. It's about a 2.5, okay, 2.5 diameter. And then I've looked around on my Airfix sprue, and I've found a little nubby bit which is 3mm, and from that I've cut the piece and filed it up, and I've made my own little spinner there. Okay, so it probably needs a bit more. Looks like a match, doesn't it? Looks like a match. And that will work fine because that's exactly what they look like in the photos. So that's good. So I've glued that on the end there. That's ready to go. So what I need to do now is I need to cut out one of these circles. Now, how am I going to do that? Well, if you measure it up, it's just over 50mm. Yeah, 49.9, which is nearly 50. Okay, so 100 round, 100 round, 100 round. There's not many things the right size. This is the best I could do. It's 52. It's going to be a millimetre over on each side, but quite frankly, with a bit of trimming and messing around, that's probably going to be fine. And there we go. It's going to need a little bit of trimming, but it's not too bad. It's hard to see on camera. It's not too bad. So what I'll do now is I'll just tidy that up a bit. The reason I was doing on the white paper is so that you don't scratch and rip off the what's printed on there. So if you do that, it's going to be a bit of a nightmare. So once that's off and you tidy it up a bit, okay, we'll call that tidied. Save this video. Always works so much better when not shooting camera. So assume that's cut it out neatly. I'm doing a terrible job today. And what you want to do now is find the centre, which you can do if you sort of have it over your cutting board. That's actually right in the middle of the prop thing. You can see there's a point, there's a centre, so mark that with a sharp knife. You'll do a much far neater job than I'm doing, of course. And once you've got that, through she goes. You want a tight fit, so I've actually used a 2mm drill bit. Then I know I can sort of worry it out a little bit. And remember, your spinner's going to hide things. And there you go. Once I tidy up the edges a little bit, we have got basically a spinner. I think it's easiest to see over white. There you go. So you can see the blades there, and that's that solution. And when you finish it up, it looks terrific when it's on the cow. Now the next problem child to deal with, well, is here the bombs. Actually, I call them depth charges for. The Sunderland can carry depth charges, but actually Airfix has given you bombs. So yeah, these are bombs, because you can tell because they're kind of round and pointy and they've got little spinny things. Now, they're okay except for this end. I mean, they'll sand up and they'll look reasonably good. So let's get one off, and don't do this at home, kiddies. Old school Airfix. Yeah, so, they'll sand up reasonably well. It's not too bad. I've just basically, they come in two halves. I've already glued the two halves together, okay? So I already did that, had them on the sprue and whacked a bit of paint on. They're not too bad. But the biggest error and the biggest problem is here, because if you have a look at this photo, okay, that's not how it is. It's hollow, it's open, and although it's just such a little thing, they look so stupid like that. It really annoyed me. So I thought, have I got some tube? And I do. I've got all this evergreen tube stuff, right? and it comes in really handy. This is an assorted pack, right, 7-piece assortment, and that's great. That gives me all different sizes. And look at that. If I measure this, it's about, well, it's about a 4.6. All right. And my tube is 4.6. Made for each other. So that is going to easily replace that and look a lot better. So let's get rid of the Airfix bit. Now I like the fins. Okay, I'm going to keep those little fins. They're correct and they look really nice. And there we go. And that's all I've got to do. But now we've got fins and we've got a tube at the back. That looks much better, I think, than the one that's just kind of solid and boring. Because the thing is, you'll only see them underneath, but at least now they'll have a little circular. And that's an easy thing to do. That really is a 5-minute job. Admittedly, I've got quite a few of them to do, so all up it'll probably take me an hour. Okay, let's move on to a bit of painting. Now don't worry, this isn't a new camo scheme that I've asked up, but I'd covered up everything I could so that I could do these roots of the wings and of the tailplane here. And also there's a little bit of extra camo that has to go from the grey on the wing. But I'll show you that when we paint it. Now this is the surfacer, which is basically like Mr. Surfacer, you know, the primer sort of stuff that you use, or you can use it as a filler, as I've done for years. But that one's lacquer based. This one is water with a little bit of alcohol in it based. But basically your brushes wash out with water, and as you saw, you basically paint the stuff on, and it's going to need hardly any sanding at all. But I'll give that a light sand now, and then I'll work on with painting up the wing roots and finishing the last little triangle piece of camo that has to go on there. Now this is perfect plastic putty, and it is perfect for a problem like this. Underneath here, the joint is just woeful. And I don't know what Airfix was thinking, why the wing couldn't actually, join to the fuselage like in most kits, but it's sort of sticking out about, nearly a centimetre. Anyhow, perfect plastic putty, you pop it in, wet your finger, wipe it over, job done. Now, Mr. Surfacer, right, this is the aqueous one, Mr. Surfacer Watery. Let's give that a try with my brush. It's just like paint. You put it on thin, you never put it on too thick, it dries really fast, and it solves the problem. And here she is, out of the spray booth, given enough time to dry, and hopefully all the areas that have been masked are now going to look the correct colours. So I've painted the leading edges already white, and then I've had to let them dry overnight and mask them. Now for the moment of truth, it's scary. Wings are all looking good, that's all good, the joint's good, pretty happy with that, accomplished all that. Now for the final moment, this is where it gets a bit tricky. Look at that, that's not bad. There's a tiny little thing there. I can touch that up with a bit of white paint, but that is looking fine. There we go. There she is. Yeah, I've done a few extra things that you didn't get to see in this video. I'm saving that up for next time because this video is gone long enough. And look, there is lots of things there. The cabins and the canopies, and they've all been masked and done. I'll show that in the next video. There's lots of little things that I've done. Look, we've got spinning props all the way through. It's terrific. I love those. They look really good. Thank you very much, David Eves. That was a fantastic idea, and I really appreciate you sending me those. I can't believe it. Look like it's going to fly off the bench. All right. Well, look, that's everything for this video. There is more to come in less than a week's time. So look out for the very last video for the Sunderland, which will show decals, weathering, all the last things, the bombs go on. It's it. It'll be done. So I hope you enjoyed that. And look, hit those buttons down there. It's really important, apparently. It pushes the algorithm, something like that. And if you really like what you've seen, you can always buy me a curry. That would be fantastic, That really helps me out. All right, well, that's about all I've got to say. There's lots more to come, and I hope you'll stay with me on the journey. The Sunderland is nearing completion. It's pretty exciting. You can tell I'm excited. All right, it's goodbye from Australia, and it's hooroo from Harry Houdini.